Good morning, folks, and welcome to the third virtual meeting of the Yorkshire EV Club. If everyone would just like to say hi, we've got Ben here. Hello, Ben.
Hello.
And we've got James Morris. Hello, James.
Hi, how you doing?
The legendary YouTuber that is Paul Carnell.
Hi.
We've got John T, as I like to call him.
Hello.
Leaf driver David Sharman with the cutest dog in the world.
Hello.
We've got Ed, legendary Model S driver.
Hello.
And we've got Ivan, who is our spreadsheet wizard, who will be talking about his spreadsheet shortly. Is that right, Ivan?
Yeah, morning.
So, folks, what we thought we'd like to do for you is debunk a few EV myths. And boy, at the moment, they seem to be, there's documentaries and all sorts knocking the EV world and what we do. So what we thought we'd do is just go through and debunk a few EV myths. So over to Paul Carnell first. Paul, what's the biggest myth that people throw at you and that you debunk?
Oh, well, I can only go back to what one of my mates said the other day. He says they're so uneconomical because as you press your foot down on the accelerator, the faster the motor spins, the more power you use, so you'll run out quicker. And I said, well, yeah, I can understand that, but doesn't exactly the same thing happen with a petrol car. You know.
It's true, isn't it? Yeah, it is. You know, the more power you give something, the more it uses up whatever resource it's working from. Ian, obviously you used to work at selling cars. I know you're still within a garage role, but you're not in sales anymore. What was the biggest myth people used to come to you with that frustrated you because you heard it so often?
I think to me, the key right from day one when we started selling was obviously back in the day when there was just probably Leaf and Zoe. Again, was always range. Range was always the thing. But when you talk to people about what journeys they do, generally it's a commute, generally it's a short commute. How often do they make a long journey? Very infrequent for the vast majority of people. So EVs generally are suitable for everybody for the day-to-day commute, occasional weekend journeys, longer journeys. Yes, you need to plan more, but lots of people think that they need lots and lots of range. And, you know, the average journey, average commute, you know, maybe 20 miles maximum. Every single EV on the market can do that quite easily. And again, your fuel station's at home, so it's very, very easy to charge your car because you can always plug it in when you get home. It charges automatically for you overnight. And next day, fully charged, off you go again. So range was always the thing that people said initially. Obviously, now we've moved on. Range is no longer an issue. You can get EVs now that are comfortably 280 miles. Tesla's up to now 400 miles. So again, range isn't a problem. And again, back then, cost again was another thing for people. But again, back then you could buy a Nissan Leaf for 110, 120 pounds a month on a PCP, ridiculously cheap. Obviously not as cheap now, but back then they were ridiculously cheap.
Yeah, speaking of price, Ivan, you've done a lot of work on pricing, haven't you, for EVs?
Yeah, so I'm in the market of buying an EV. So I wanted to go into exactly everything that could possibly cost me something. So I basically put a little bit of a spreadsheet together, which I've posted on the Yorkshire Facebook page, and also I believe it's going to be put on the website. So if I can share my screen, if that's possible, Darren.
Yeah, I've allowed multiple to share, so you should be okay.
Yeah. So essentially, here's the Excel spreadsheet. So I'm just going to base it on a 40 kilowatt Nissan Leaf compared to a Ford Focus. They're both brand new. It's a 1 litre Ford Focus. So essentially, the car model is whatever you want to put in there. That doesn't really matter. So I'm just going to put Nissan Leaf 40 kilowatt hours. Right, the WLTP claim mileage can be got off the EV database. So I know for this car it's 168. But in reality, you'll probably get about 80% of that. So that's all that figure there is in the summer, which drops it down to 134. In the winter, it drops down to about 60%. So I don't know if that's a fair representation. The usable battery range. So again, when you are quoted a figure on an EV, it's always the total battery range, but with most things, there's a little buffer. So I've factored in a 36 kilowatt hour usable battery. And these two sections here, this is basically just for charging purposes. So we know that batteries really work best between 20 and 80% of charge. So all this does is it kind of gives you how many times, based on those two parameters for the summer and for the winter, how many miles you're going to get out of the battery between those two charges. So if we go on to the electric tariff, so I've just put in a figure of 30 there. What we're actually going to do is adjust it for a proper tariff. Now, the tariff we're looking at is the Octopus Go, which is a really good tariff. There are other tariffs available, but for this particular one, between 12.30 and 4.30, the per kilowatt hour is about 5 pence. So you can see just all these figures down here, and it will give you the electric cost for the summer. Now, this is based on the mileage, which is in another tab. So this will actually change based on the figures that we actually enter next time round. So service and road fund licence. So I'm just touting a figure of £150 for a service on an ICE car. It's probably more than that. And I've said it's done at 12,000 miles and it's done every year. I've checked up the cost for road fund licence, and I know that the first year is 175 for a Focus. I'm making it a bit more fair and saying £150, which is what it will cost you in years two going forward. The EV service, again, I've probably overestimated this, but what I've said is £155 every 18,000 miles or 2 years. And as we know, EV road fund licence is zero because there's zero emissions. Now, if we click on the mileage tab, I've just put a basic 1,000 miles in each month. You can adjust it to whatever you want, and it gives you the breakdown per week, per month, and then per year. And it gives you, so if we have a look at the colour code section here, the winter mileage, is basically January to March and October to December. That can be adjusted if necessary. And then the summer is April to September. So we get a share of winter and summer mileage. Next, I'll click on finance. So here I've just said, if you're financing the car, basically we want to put the figures in here. So I've just said that we can get a loan for 5%, let's say, if you're buying this car outright. So if we say we're going to pay a £4,000 deposit, which is the same for both cars. So this is the left-hand side, which is for your EV loan, and the right-hand side for your ICE loan. Now, I know that you could probably get a Leaf for about £24,880. And for the ICE car, I've checked, and I know that I can get a Ford Focus for £21,000. So make that a bit fair. I said we're going to take it over 4 years because, you know, just because we can. We can see the difference in there. So straight away, you can see that the EV looks like it's going to be more expensive than the ICE car. There's a lot to take in consideration. So next tab here is the fuel cost. So again, this little box here for the Ford Focus is just, you can put any name in there, it's just for reference. Now, I know for a Ford Focus, it's about 40 miles per gallon, I think it was. And what I'm doing is based on £1.20 per cost of litre of fuel. Now, as we know, fuel costs are pretty volatile, and especially around this time of, this particular lockdown, that's actually gone down to less than £1. But generally, I'm just putting in 120. We know that once the lockdown is raised, this figure is going to go up. And I know that based on what I've looked up on the Ford Focus, that it's 130 grams of CO2 per kilometre. So next thing is, click on the comparison results, and then we get a nice little graphical representation of why it's best that the EV, bearing in mind that the EV's only just basically come out and the monthly cost was a lot more. But when you take into account the fuel costs and also the service costs, the road tax, you can see quite clearly that the ICE car, even though it's cheaper, is still more expensive overall than the EV cost. And you also get a nice little spreadsheet there or column there to give you the total tons of CO2 that you would save by just buying an EV. And there you go, you can see a graphical representation. So I hope that's been helpful to everyone.
That's fantastic, and it really shows you in black and white. The savings are really there for all to see.
Yeah, precisely. So there's a copy on the forum, on the Facebook page, and I believe one of our colleagues is also going to put it on the EV forum, or the EV website. Yeah,
the Yorkshire EV Club website is going to go on there. Ivan, thank you for that. That's very comprehensive. Next on to David. David, you've had a Leaf for some time, haven't you now?
Yes, I've had it now for 3 years in August.
And how are you finding that?
Absolutely no trouble at all. I've had no trouble with the car. It's been completely reliable. I retired the second half of last year, but prior to that, I was commuting every day between Todmorden, where I live, and Keighley, and that meant going over the tops and down the other side, and I was doing that 5 days a week with no problems at all. It managed to cut my fuel costs from about £200 a month from the Skoda Fabia VRS that I used to drive down to about £20 a month.
What an amazing saving, and exponentially. That's, it's a no-brainer, isn't it? Ben, you've got a Kia Soul, that's right, isn't it?
That's right, yes. I've had it for 2 and a bit years, and I've been averaging about 20,000 a year until lockdown, when I've only done less than 1,000 miles in 3 months now.
Yeah, that's the way it goes. Yeah.
I've driven everywhere. The first journey was probably most impressive, because I bought the car in Dundee, and in the first afternoon of ownership, drove it 300 miles from Dundee back to Yorkshire.
Right, and just so people know, what's the size of battery in your particular model?
The Kia Soul, I've got the slightly later one, which has 30 kilowatts. Kia quite usable battery. And in summer, I can easily get 130 miles of distance. In winter...
Has yours got the Chadimo charging? Has yours got the Chadimo charging?
Yes.
Yeah.
The Chadimo and Type 1 the same as an earlier Nissan Leaf.
Yeah.
Yeah. And since then, I've driven 20,000 miles a year and charged everywhere. I do actually find Ecotricity, when it's most convenient, to actually work. It's been fairly reliable for me, although saying that I mostly use Polar.
Over the years, the main problem I've had is that the communication's not working on the pump, but as we all know, that has a benefit of making it a free charge. So I don't know, that's the biggest fault I get, is that it's on free vend, and I'm not going to complain about that. So you've had a bit of bad luck, John, haven't you, with your Leaf this year?
Yeah, mine got smashed by somebody turning right in front of me. So I forgot.
People say, don't they, about electric cars, you can't recycle them, this, that, and the other. You tell folks what happened with your Leaf.
So my Leaf, it was smashed up. It was written off by the insurance company. I had the opportunity to buy it back, and I can't really repair it myself, so there wasn't any point in terms of that kind of thing. But I put a thing out to basically say, look, the battery's working fine, the motor's working fine, it's pretty much all there. Does anybody want it? And a garage up in Scotland who does EV conversions purchased it off me. I didn't really take it myself, just so they can get it there. And now it's being converted into a Morris Minor. So the engine's being put in now, and the batteries have been put in the back. So it's almost there in terms of the conversion.
I'd love to see the finished article. I can't wait to see that.
Yeah, so would I. Yeah, so hopefully I will do. The guys who were doing it said that would happen. So it'd be good. Like I say, I mean, and it's so much easier than if a nice car gets smashed. Most of the engine parts get smashed as well, so the internal combustion engine falls apart, and you can't reuse those parts in the majority of cases. I mean, you can. It's a lot harder just to take out parts of that than it is for an EV. So it's a lot easier thing, and obviously converting a classic's a really brilliant way to keep those cars running as well.
Yeah, fantastic. So Ed, you've had a Model S for how long have you had your Model S now?
Well, it'll be 4 years this September. So scary how fast that's gone.
You're quite active on Twitter. So what's the biggest frustration for you in terms of myths and people talking nonsense?
Yeah, I think for me, the thing I see most often is, I mean, I've got quite an interest in the power industry. I grew up right next to a whacking great coal-fired power station in Oxfordshire, and it's around the emissions of cars. I mean, there's been a lot of misinformation and just downright lies from people who, you know, try and make out that, oh, if you charge an EV from, you know, from the power grid, it's dirty because you've got all these, you know, coal power stations and all that stuff. And I spend a lot of my time fighting that nonsense because, you know, we all know the UK's coal power stations, well, at the moment, they've been off for about the last 1,000 odd hours. So, you know, over a month. They're closing down at a rate of knots. I think there's only about 3 left now in the country. So they're very clean. And in fact, last night, I think about 7:30 p.m., we actually had a record for the lowest CO2 per kilowatt hour ever. So if you'd have charged your car, you know, rapid charged it in that half hour last night, you'd have, you know, for an average EV like a Leaf or something, it'd have been, I think, 8.5 grams per mile, you know, and when you compare that to a petrol car, that's 160, 170 grams per mile. Big difference.
Yeah, and it's funny, isn't it, that the power station, I mean, in Yorkshire, obviously we have Drax, but it's mostly biomass now, isn't it? It's not even coal. Yep. I think one of the towers coal still?
They've got, I think they've got two units that are on coal still, but they're being converted. I think that they're due to shut down the coal use next March or something thereabout. So, yeah, I mean, but you know, burning effectively trees, which is what they do with biomass, is a bit better, but it's still not perfect.
Not
you know,
best. It's still burning stuff, I suppose. But I know, having heard someone from Drax speak, it is a crop that is specifically grown to be burnt, isn't it? As it were. So, yes, it's not the best, but it's
marginally better. Well, I mean, we've got a huge amount more wind power coming on stream over the next 12, 18 months. It's looking like the government are going to roll back some of the taxes rather on solar. So we might be able to see a lot more, you know, like supermarkets, warehouses putting up solar. So, you know, things are changing, which is great to see.
And it's, again, these records keep being smashed, don't they? For how little coal burn. Like, it's fantastic, and it's if you're an EV driver with certain companies like Octopus, there are benefits. You know, there's been a lot of negative. People are reducing their bills simply by using electricity, and people will take notice of that. Finally, James. Can
I ask Ed a question? Sorry, Darren. Ed, your car's 4 years old. Surely the batteries are nearly knackered then.
Oh yeah, mate. Yeah. Oh yeah. Terrible. Oh, they heck. I've lost about 5% range on my car, which is absolutely bang on the numbers. You know what it should be. I can still do Oxford to Sheffield in one hit. You know, I've got my family down south, non-stop, no problem at all.
How many miles has it got?
Sorry?
How many miles on your car?
On 100% charge, about two,
how many miles
I think.
How many have you driven?
Was that? Oh, driven 62,000 miles.
So you've lost 5% of your range over 4. Now, can you imagine the effect that would have had on an engine, the amount of maintenance that would be in your immediate future.
Yeah, it would be. I'd be looking at, you know, some prices, and of course you got things like your brake pads as well. It's got the original pads and discs on it.
Yeah, regen braking, it's great, isn't it?
Fantastic.
Right, so lastly, I'll come to James. James, you've joined us for the first time today, haven't you?
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I'm just I popped in. Thanks to Paul for hooking up with me via Facebook. And you know, I'm really very gratified and thankful that you invited me on here. From just I'm from Which EV, the website. It's a fairly new website. Just been going since the end of last year. And we're all about you know, promoting the same kind of things as you guys, and you know, we really love what you're up to and the enthusiasm that you have for the market. I wanted to kind of maybe add something to what was said about the crass leaf and the reuse of materials, because would it be okay if I share a web?
Yeah,
a
you go
website?
right ahead.
Yeah.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, right. Great. So so I'm going to share this article that we published last week, which shows some of the conversions that have been done. And one of this was a bit controversial. This Ferrari. I think some people thought it was a bit of a travesty to take a classic Ferrari 308 and stick a electric drivetrain in it, but at least it would actually work then when you wanted it to.
It's been improved as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, well, I mean, it did 0 to 60 in 7.3 seconds originally. Now it's 3.5, and if you really tune it, 2.7. And top speed about the same. But you know, the point you were making about recycling batteries, this whole you know, the two companies I talked to were electric classic cars in Wales and Electrogenic in Oxfordshire, and the majority of the batteries they use are out of Teslas, crashed Teslas, and you know, it absolutely debunks, you know, this idea that the batteries don't last very long. I mean, I have a lot of debates on our Facebook page about people saying, well, you know, a mobile phone battery can only be recharged 1,300 times. So so that means that you know, you're not going to get very long battery life out of your car. But if you work that out, you know, you recharge your phone probably almost every day. Whereas I don't know how often you guys recharge your EVs. You know, if you're only doing, you know, the 10 to 20 miles a day, it might not be every week. And if it's every week, that's 25 years of battery usage for 1,300 recharges. So that kind of really, you know, the batteries that they use are secondhand in these cars, but they're perfectly good for, you know, a lot of them are rated for over 100,000 miles before they even reach 70% of their charge.
And also,
And
of
actually,
course, cells can be replaced. You know, individual cells can be replaced in some battery packs, can't they?
yeah, and also, I mean, another story we we covered, I think you've probably seen it in lots of places, is Tesla announced this 1,000,000-mile battery, you know, a battery that will supposedly last 1,000,000 miles. Lexus has come out with a car where the batteries are guaranteed for 1,000,000 kilometers to 70%. And I think GM has got a similar announcement with LG Chem. That's going to be next week about the same sort of thing. So this whole idea that the batteries, you know, that there's a potential for electric cars to last a lot longer than ICE cars. I mean, ICE cars lose power after a decade or so anyway. You know, you lose a lot of horsepower. So you know, it's there are so many positives, and you know, I think that there's so many myths that we have to address in this industry. So I'm going to stop my sharing. So,
sorry, I think one of those things that sort of feeds into this whole, you know, EV myths thing is on the batteries. People often ask me, well, you know, as you said, oh, my phone only lasts, you know, a year, 18 months, and then I've got to, you know, replace my phone because the battery's not, you know, charging right. And the thing I say to that is you have to remember that you're charging your phone to 100% every day, and the phone's got no management system in it at all. It charges it to 100%. You discharge it, and that's what wrecks the batteries. Whereas with cars, you know, obviously the onboard computer systems manage the battery for you, so you can never charge it completely full, and you can never completely discharge it. So it manages that bit in the middle, so that you you cannot wreck the battery. You know, that's the whole point of it.
Also, batteries in your phone are designed to fill maximum space and have no spare space, no cooling, no ventilation, whereas car batteries do have.
I think the other thing is, without getting too geeky, it's hard to explain to other people that it's a completely different chemistry generally.
Yes.
The chemistry of the batteries and the formation of the batteries is very different.
Well, what amazes me though is if I go to a garage and I buy a Ford Focus, it remains a Ford Focus and it never improves. If I buy a Model S or any Tesla car, I'll wake up, have an update, and next thing I know, I've got a dog mode. I've got to go out and buy a dog then, but you know what I mean? I'm saying, constantly evolving, improving product, and you know, old-fashioned cars, you can't say that. It's just, it blows my mind. You know, it blows my mind that.
One thing I've noticed as well is the talk about these rare earth metals. I don't know if you've seen the latest YouTube video by Ewan McTurk. He was talking about that the biggest myth out there was about the rare earth metals that batteries use. It's a load of rubbish. Essentially, there's only, I think, 17 rare earth metals, and the lithium-ion batteries don't actually touch any of those metals. And then there was a thing about cobalt as well. Cobalt is actually made for or produced or used in batteries, but the biggest user of cobalt is actually mobile phones and laptops because of the lithium-ion batteries in there, and it's very small for EVs.
And getting less as well. It's getting less as well. I mean, that's one of the big, you know, the Tesla announcement I was talking about is about actually reducing the amount of cobalt, because that is quite inexpensive. It's probably the thing that pushes the battery to the most. And they reckon that in about 3 years, by about 2023, the cost of a battery will hit about $100 per kilowatt hour, which is the point where the batteries cease to be the thing that make electric cars more expensive, because the rest of the electric cars are actually potentially cheaper. So then by about 2023, electric cars will start to be just across the board cheaper than ICE cars, which will probably be the death knell for ICE, except for certain specialist things.
People don't think about the difference between an ICE car and an EV, but essentially what you've got a more efficient vehicle with so many less moving parts, and that, you know, you're factoring out so many things that can go wrong. It really is. If you know anything about engineering, you understand that there's got to be many benefits from that.
The thing that really blows my mind when you drive an electric vehicle after having driven petrol cars for quite a long time is they appear to be more economical in traffic than they are on highways, which is kind of the opposite way of thinking. And that's, once you think about it, actually it's obvious, because basically when you're stopped in an electric car, you're not using any energy except for maybe your radio or something, or air conditioning, whereas petrol car is just sitting there wasting loads and loads of energy. And you know, I think since the majority of what people do in their driving really is traffic-based, stop-start stuff, it's a complete no-brainer that you have to switch over to these kind of cars. I mean, I think you know, there was a report last week that you know, just by removing all kind of domestic and kind of commercial use of vehicles, we could reduce our emissions by 14% by switching all those to electric vehicles. There's a little bit of because of our energy production is still it has some emissions, that reduces it to 12%, but that's still a pretty significant drop, because that's not including all the other things that are causing these emissions, you know, industry, planes, you know.
I think for me as well, kind of going to your point in terms of traffic, one of the funniest for me myths to bust is, apart from Ed, whose car most people will know goes very fast, when I used to have my Leaf pulling up to people in the traffic lights, and they just look at your car and go, no, I've got an M3. There's no way you're going to get off the lights quicker than I am. It's a completely unspoken, no spoken word to basically say that I'm going to bust your myth, but then just sticking your foot down, past the traffic lights, see you later. And like the BMW i3 has actually got a detuned engine that still goes quicker than any M Sports car off the line. So that's it's a nice little one to kind of bust physically without any spoken words at all.
Yeah, we like to keep this secret to ourselves. Actually, EVs are so much more fun.
Yeah,
they are.
You should have seen my face when I test drove a Model 3 Performance. I was literally unable to speak because I drove the Performance one, and my friend was saying, right, he's driven one before, was saying, you just got to show me some places where I could really gun it up to 60, because the limit was going to be 60 when we got there. And it turned my brain to jelly, just how incredibly, you've never, it's just brutal. And I've owned some pretty fast sports cars in my time. It was just, wow. It's unreal. It's like nothing you've ever experienced.
It's a really good.
Sorry, I was going to say, in terms of the Kia Niro. So having had a kind of test drive in that, one of the things that actually put me off it was so powerful it rips through the tyres, because it doesn't control itself very well off the line, and it's just the amount of times you'll flat spot your tyres by now, the amount of power that puts out.
Yeah.
Well, I must admit, the 30 kilowatt one, the first one I had, I spun the wheels on that one quite a few times, heading out of junctions and traffic lights and that. Just not even thinking about it, just putting a squirt on.
Unfortunately, you can't do that on a Tesla these days, because they disabled the traction control option in the menu. So
yeah.
you can't turn off traction control now, which is a shame, because it's actually really, really good fun in the snow. But there you go.
I can imagine, yeah.
Surely you could hack that. There must be, like in the because we like in the EV industry, like the early days of the PC industry. That's kind of my colleagues on Which EV. We're all from the PC industry background rather than car background. And the reason why we got into it is because it was really exciting. The early 90s, the 90s in the PC industry, and a bit before that was so fun, because it was like really something was really happening. And the EV industry is precisely like that. And then there was a kind of the movement to customization. And I'm wondering, that's why I love these classic cars, because they've got all the kind of drivability and funk and kind of everyday usability, except they're a really cool classic car. I mean, you can pay the same for the E version of the Fiat 500 modern as you would to turn an old-fashioned Fiat 500 into one. Which would you rather drive around town?
Yeah.
I do have a classic car, a Citroen 2CV, and a couple of companies out there who convert them to electric. But no, they don't have rapid charging on the converted cars.
Yeah. Some of them, they can do it. I mean, but there's a lot of proprietary kind of extra circuitry that they need to get into, which is, they have to deal with manufacturers a lot. So they'll go up to I think maybe, well, a lot of them are just 7 kilowatt, but they can do 50 kilowatt. And also using Tesla engines makes things a lot more complicated, because then you need to have 400 volts rather than a kind of smaller voltage. But fun. If I had the money, I'd definitely be getting one of those classic cars.
Yeah,
great.
Some of those conversions. There's an E-Dub out there, isn't it, that's been converted? I've seen on fully charged, and he hires that out, and that'd be so much fun. Just having an old sort of classic camper there that's got the performance suddenly for something.
Yeah, I mean, Electrogenic has done this one they call the Marmite bus, which has kind of got a rat look kind of exterior, and that is yeah, I mean, that's got way more power than it had originally. It's much quicker, and they said they could fit 200 kilowatt hours of batteries in it if they wanted to. So just think of the kind of range you could get out of that.
Wow.
Yeah, fantastic.
One of the companies put that money back, has actually put that much battery in a Defender, so that a company can use it in Germany to kind of go between German towns selling some kind of eco-friendly food product.
If you can think about the utilities of a Defender's body shape and whatnot, there's so many things you could do with that.
And of course, being an EV, if it's got an onboard power socket, you can run power tools off it.
Yeah.
So you could take it in the forest if you're if you're doing tree work. You could. The options are pretty much endless, aren't they?
It's a popular choice because there's a lot of space inside them, and they because they can take up to 3.1 tons of weight on the chassis. You know, there's a lot of flexibility about, you know, how much battery you can put in there, and you can put quite a lot of battery in it without damaging the utility of it. You'll still have tons of storage space. So you know, that if you look at these sites, a lot of them have done the Defenders. I think Defenders, Fiat 500s, and Beetles are like three of the most popular cars used for conversions, because also there's loads of them about, and you know, in varying conditions, and you know, Defender, I think it's an aluminium chassis as well, so you know, the bodywork might be a bit might have some issues, but you know, that generally the car can be quite sound even if the engine's done a few miles, so it makes a really sensible choice. And you know, to add a Beetle, having a more reliable engine in one of those is definitely a plus.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're great, but they're not very reliable.
Yeah.
As air cooled, especially the original air cooled ones. If you got them, those.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know, I've had this little sort of dream for a fair few years now, and I'd love to do it. I think it'd be hilarious. I'd love to take possibly the worst British Leyland car ever produced, which was a Princess.
The Austin Princess. Yeah.
Right.
Metro.
Convert it, put some pretty serious, you know, Tesla motors and stuff in there, and just gun that around town. I think that'd be utterly hilarious.
There is a lot of space, and to be fair,
Austin Allegro.
suspension could take it as well, because
it's
terrible suspension, but it's like because it's wishbone, isn't it? Suspension on the Princess.
Yeah.
So that could take the weight.
the possibilities are endless for conversions, aren't they? Really are.
Well, I used to have a smart Roadster, and I've had two of them. And of all the cars I've owned, that was the car I loved most of all. And it was interesting to see if that could be converted to electric. I would imagine it could be.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they actually did it at one point in terms of just a custom built one or whatever, a show car. I'm pretty sure they made electric.
Yeah. I think any of these cars can be converted because there's quite a decent you know, aftermarket kind of kit business there. You know, these Hyper 9 motors, which I think they produce 120 bhp on their own, and you can put two together, so you can get and that will fit quite nicely in the space. I mean, two Hyper 9s is a lot. I think it's only like 50-60 kilos, and you know, and a big engine is going to be like 300 kilos. So you know. You can actually, you know, a lot of it's a bit of a myth that the electric vehicles are another myth. There you go. That's our theme. The electric vehicles are heavier because, you know, if you take out the engines are much lighter, so you know you can add a decent amount of battery space back in, and not overdo it. And also you can space it around. I mean that 308 that I showed earlier is apparently much better handling now because the instead of having all the weight where the engine was in the middle of the car, or actually more towards the back, it's actually distributed across the car now, so it's got a much more even balance, and so it handles much better. And the same with Beetles, because you know they put some of the batteries at the front, and there's a little bit less rear weight heavy, and then handle much better, and it's way faster. What's not to like?
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, I've got a couple of petrol-head friends, and I've mentioned that electric conversions, and they both turned around and said, like, you're ripping the heart out of the vehicle. So what do you think about that? You know, that's what's being said to me.
See, for me, it's just a heart replacement. So if you just kind of go, well, the heart's dying anyhow, if you can replace it with something that's even better, that actually keeps it going for that much longer. Because if you look at, like, especially some of the really rare ones out there that are absolutely brilliant, like E-Type Jaguars. You can find an E-Type Jaguar, you can get like the body and frame and things like that. You can get reproductions of that, but getting a reproduction engine is an absolute nightmare. But there aren't many of the, especially the 6-litre engines out there. And what there are destroying over time because they only made, 2,000 of them. Yeah. So if you can stick electric system in there, then you get the same beauty of the actual full chassis and things like that, and the kind of hand-built workings of a lot of that kind of stuff. and he keeps it alive.
But the other thing I've heard is people saying about, oh, they like cars with gearboxes, but gearboxes essentially were just to fix the efficiency and the torque of a petrol or a diesel car. So, you know, they're effectively using that to fix an issue that was inherent with ICE cars. So it's kind of a non-starter for me.
And a
still
basic
use them,
conversion, a basic conversion will use the original gearbox anyway. That's the whole point.
It's
Is
easier
that,
to rip it than ripping it out.
for common conversions, you can just basically get a plate that kind of interfaces with the clutch on the you know there's some for a Fiat 500. You can get certain BMW ones. They just you know, you can buy the whole thing and do it yourself. And you know that's another point. Is that a lot of this stuff is reversible. And I think that just surprisingly that 308 conversion is convertible. Can be put back to its original, and you actually save in the engine. You know, so you could basically take the whole electric drivetrain out of it and have the original car again.
Yeah, so the one that the Electron Garage up in Scotland are converting with my Leaf parts, that's using the clutch. So it goes into the clutch plate and whatever, and then you have got the full transmission, if you still want to call it that. I don't really have transmission stuff, but you've got the whole clutch mechanism. So you can still use all the gears. And it means you can go off the lights very quickly in first gear and stay in first gear if you want to do so.
I think what we need to do with your petrol head friends, Paul, is get them in an EV. Get them in an EV and let them have a drive. And then forget all about the engine.
That's my intention, actually. There's one of the guys that's actually joined Yorkshire Electric Vehicle Club, but he won't admit it. He's actually bought a push bike, electric push bike, off of eBay. That cost him actually £4,000 from what I've seen of it.
Wow.
And the other one are bikers as well. Paul Berry and Anthony Farmer. And I've got an arrangement with them to fetch my car around for them to have a go and to see it and experience it when the lockdown's finished. We're not passing diseases on to each other.
People ask me, don't you miss the noise of the engine? Why
No.
would I, when I can drive in silence, hear my radio, and have peace? Why would I want to have noise and rattle when stationary at traffic lights?
See, I do miss the noise. If you have a really good sports car, I would miss the noise. But I would prefer the performance of an EV versus the noise of the exhaust when I put a foot down.
If you can afford to commute in a nice 8-cylinder sports car or something, then you can afford an EV as well for your second.
The planet can't afford for you to commute in an 8-cylinder sports car.
Exactly. So you could have your EV every day and keep your old sports car on the garage for weekends.
Yeah. Like Jay Leno, with his 400 sports cars that he hardly ever uses, and these electric ones he does.
He's had to be a person just to keep on top of the tax and insurance of these 400 cars.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't have a sports car, but I had a 4.3 litre V8 Lexus, all singing, all dancing. And the Lexus based their cars on being so quiet, and stable, not a noise. And in actual fact, I drove that car once up to two little old ladies that were actually meeting in the middle of a local road, and they was having a chat, and I came really, really close to them with the car before they noticed that I was there.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's funny, actually, thinking about the noise of the cars, that if you find that a lot of sports cars now, because they've got to actually pass the emissions regulations, they actually can't then make that much noise, so they're artificially piping the sound of an engine to make it sound more powerful than it is through your speakers.
I've never heard of that one. It's
Mercedes and BMW are the worst offenders, but apparently Audi do that as well. They pump the sound. It is the sound of the engine would sound like if they were allowed to basically have it full pelt. So it is it's not entirely artificially made, but it is artificial actually in your car, because it can't sound like that, because if it did, it would be breaking the emissions rules, because it'd be pumping stuff out the back too much.
I'll remember that for the next conversation I have with him.
So like the BMW i8 was, I think, the first one to do it. So the i8, when you put your foot down, it actually pumps artificial sound of an engine. But then they copied it on a lot of the other engines as well.
I'd not want that.
No.
Unnecessary.
If you're a proper petrol head, I get it, because there is a kind of special sound in it.
Well, funny enough, you're talking.
Really bad.
There was an article I read yesterday. Apparently, all EVs from July the 1st last year have got to have an artificial sound for warning people who are partially sighted and blind as well. So it's kind of a safety feature.
Yeah, under 20 miles an hour. Yeah.
I've got a bit of a bee in my bonnet about that one because it really doesn't solve many problems. I mean, I actually hired. I was over in Spain last year, and I hired a. It was a Seat. It was a new Seat. I think it was a new Seat Ibiza. Absolutely dead silent, like impressively quiet. And I just thought, I was driving that down the road, and I thought, why are they mandating, noise generators for EVs when I literally cannot hear a whisper, of this thing? And fair enough, I didn't get out of the car and have a look, how quiet it was outside. But still, we've had hybrids now for over a decade. I think it's a bit of a knee-jerk reaction, in my opinion. It is obviously, important that partially sighted and people with hearing issues are, there's something there to help them. But I don't necessarily think having every car make a different sound is the problem, because every manufacturer's got a different sound. They haven't just said, right, it's going to be this one standard sound because we've done some tests and this is what people can hear from different directions. So I don't know if you've heard them, but the Tesla one's like quite a sort of like a low bassy kind of drone noise, and then the Nissan one's like a beep 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 beep. It's like
Zoe's a drone. It's quite a funny little drone. Yeah.
I don't know why there isn't like an aftermarket kind of. Remember, we used to have your kind of Windows startup sounds, and you have your custom ringtones on your phone. Why isn't there a kind of industry for custom artificial engine noises for EVs? There really should be. So
it's not
today
allowed. They've still got to actually say this is what the noise it'll make.
I mean, if I could choose, remember the Jetsons, the little hum of the cars and the Jetsons?
Yeah.
I'd love that.
I mean,
I would prefer as Elon's clip where they had the clip clop noise and whatever off the Monty Python.
I mean, I've just been chatting to Ben separately via Facebook message, and it owned up that I'm a owner of a classic Porsche, and but a lot of people really love that kind of flat six noise. Why can't you kind of like if you love that sound, why can't you stick that on your EV? Why can't you have a V8 sound?
It's a good point, but if you think about it the other way, it actually wrecks one of the main benefits of an EV in that they're quiet. And I have a mate who's a plumber who's just got an EMV 200, and he used to leave for work at like 5 in the morning in his old diesel Transit and literally wake up the entire flipping street. Now, not a whisper.
Well, that's the main reason for milk floats, isn't it? It wasn't some eco-friendly thing while we had electric milk floats in the 50s in the UK. It's because they were delivering in the middle of the night, and it was better for the neighbourhood. That was the whole point.
Well, stop journeys as well.
Yeah.
So silence is golden, right? We need to. The world is a very noisy place, and anything we can do to make it quiet is a very good thing, in my opinion.
Can you imagine?
I know. Well, there's a person a while back from the Royal Institute, Deaf Institute, or something like that, and they basically said this actually doesn't make any sense to them because they either, like you said about the kind of noise of an ice car, they're quite silent anyhow, and they said if it's going to make a noise, it has to be one standard noise. Because the thing is, with an ICE car, you know what that noise is, so you know there's a car coming. If they're making all kinds of noise, you wouldn't necessarily know that was an alarm or that was someone's phone going off, or you don't know what it is that's making that noise. There's no point having different ones for different manufacturers.
That's it. And then
an ice cream van, then everybody would look around and see you, and they wouldn't get run over.
Yeah.
But then they'd want to buy an ice lolly from you, and you'd disappoint them, and they might get violent.
You have to give drivers some credit here, don't they? I mean, you know, driving an EV makes you more careful and more conscious. You think someone's going to cross a road and they look elderly, or they might not be as, you just take more care as a driver. Ultimately, it's your responsibility if you run someone over, and treat us like adults. You know, generally EV drivers are responsible and sensible, and all of this babying, it's just, yes, let it make some noise, but let's not ruin our roads full of ridiculous noises.
I think that's another good point, actually, think about like kind of responsibility. So you, as an EV driver, you have so much more control of actually how fast you go. So with especially a manual car, so not, or even an automatic, but not kind of CVT one, if you're going at low speeds, your gears aren't necessarily designed for that thing. So you will suddenly kind of shoot that little bit further than you expect to go. You accelerate or you brake a bit more than you expected. You have so much more control in an EV that you are safer, even if you're not driving more safely as such yourself. That car will allow you to stay exactly where your body is telling you you're supposed to be going.
Yeah, I mean, with an EV as well, unless you're on cruise control or self-drive or some form of lane control, as soon as you take your foot off the accelerator, the car starts to slow down anyway. You've got your regen.
Yeah.
Especially if you're on a leaf.
And again, to that point, sorry.
Especially if you're on a leaf with the e-pedal, that really kicks in quite quickly.
Yeah, and to that point, in terms of the responsiveness, especially on like the Teslas and things like that, some things have got a really hard regen, Teslas, BMWs and things like that, whatever, then that responsive of the regenerative system responds a lot quicker than the actual physical brakes would, actually slowing you down. It's actually pulling the car back a lot quicker. So your distance, your braking distance is a lot shorter than most nice cars is.
That's one thing. Sorry, go on, Ed. Sorry, mate. Yeah, that's one thing you learn, you know, as an EV driver, isn't it? You learn to just feather the throttle pedal to just to, you know, control your speed. So you're almost using the throttle as a brake in some ways.
Do you find the regen work gives you much battery power back? Because that's one thing that I'm kind of sceptical about, and I'd really be interested to know about that.
Well, it's over a period of time, Ivan. Obviously, depending on the car, the levels of regen, but you kind of adapt it into your driving. So you don't, every time you would normally brake, you let regen do it. So if you think of the cumulative gains over a period of time, you know, I dare say there's people who work these figures out, but over a long period, then the amount of power you get back from that is exponentially great. And some cars are a lot more powerful than others. Some settings are better than others. I mean, I have a Zoe and it's not the best, but I could see on my GOM with a relatively small 40 kilowatt battery, I could see in my GOM, if I go down a big hill, I can gain 3 miles in my one level of regen. So it's there, and it is worth having. It's such a benefit over ICE cars that I never even realised before I had an EV.
Yeah,
so I live at the top of a very big hill in Sheffield here, you know, and obviously Sheffield is basically all hills, but I can get from my house to there's a rapid charger in Hope in the Peak District. It's about 11 miles that way without using any range at all.
You're basically just coasting down the hill.
Basically just coasting. So, you know, it's a long hill down, but, you know, yes, of course, on the way back, you know, you'll use more.
I mean, there are times, Ivan, when I can drive 5 miles and my gasometer, my GOM as we call it, I'll only lose a mile because of the terrain or my speed or the little bit of regen. And it is amazing how far your range can go. And especially when you're experienced and you know all the the tips and tricks. It's amazing how far you can stretch it. You really can.
Yeah, and I suppose that's one thing that you don't get with an ICE car. As soon as you take your foot off the gas pedal, you don't get more petrol put into the tank. You essentially you're just not drawing any petrol. Whereas with an electric, you're actually putting stuff back in, which gives you extra mileage.
Well, the thing with an ICE car, even when you take your foot off the pedal, you're still actually using petrol. You're just not using as much. It's still idling because it's got to keep it going.
Well, here's an example.
Only it's idle when it's actually when an ICE car is slowing down. If you say got 2,000 revs on it and you're off the gas going downhill, it's not using any petrol at all.
Yeah,
Modern ones wouldn't they? But because older ones, they'd have to kind of, because they haven't got the kind of generative things. They haven't got the 12 volt to power.
No, even any car made in the last 20, 25 years hasn't used it when going down hills when you revs up idle.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, it shuts off the injection system, so you don't actually use any. But if you coast down a hill, then you start using.
Put it into neutral, you will use fuel. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
And I did a 50-mile journey Monday, Tuesday last week, and I think I did. I gained 2 kilowatts out of that.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, the thing obviously is as well that if you're in traffic, you know, not very fast moving traffic, you know, your range just goes up a heck of a lot. So with the club here, we had a meeting at that. Do you remember that Starbucks where the Instavolt chargers was over the other side of Sheffield? So I charged up. So I charged my car to 100% there, and then that afternoon I had to drive down to Oxford, and I got I had to stop off, not to charge, just to drop some bits off in just near Coventry. So I did Sheffield, Coventry, Oxford, and then I had my MOT down at Gloucester. I had it done by the guys at Cleveley's. So I did Sheffield, Coventry, Oxford, Gloucester, one charge.
Fantastic.
How impressive is that?
But there's a point in terms of like range and how you use it there, isn't there? So like, there's a lot of people say about the Chinese cars, because Chinese use the old NEDC versus the WLTP that we use in this country now. But there's a few people raise a good point, the fact that the NEDC is actually appropriate for China, because they probably do it, because they're mainly driving around in mega cities at really low speeds. I mean, I think the average speed in China is something like about 27 miles an hour or something like that.
Wow.
Because even when they're on the motorways, there isn't many people that use them, because they live in cities of like 11 million in Wuhan, which is a small city in China. So the majority of the time they're driving in these kind of city environments, the EV will actually probably get the NEDC range. In Europe, we do a lot of variable miles, so we will do more like the WLTP mileage. So it is kind of horses for courses. In China, it's probably actually appropriate to still use those measures.
How do you guys find the cost of servicing on your cars as well? Because that's one thing that, you know, I've seen the figures in the spreadsheets, but I mean, do you have like an interim and a major service? How does it work?
Well, I have my car serviced by an independent EV specialist for about half the cost of a franchise dealer. So I think my last major service, which included a cabin air filter, which was replaced, I think it was about £70 or £80, and that would have been at least half the cost of going into a franchise dealer. And there isn't really much to do on them, really, other than just reading the battery health, which he did. And the brakes didn't need to have anything doing on it because they were fine. So if you go to a franchise dealer, it can be very expensive, and the fact that they don't do very much, it's poor value for money.
I think it's very telling. Does anybody know how much it costs to service a Model 3?
No.
So
No.
Tesla.
Go on, yeah.
So Tesla used to have a service plan, which I foolishly bought, and in hindsight, I would never do it again. That was £2,000 for 3 services.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And all they did was replace the wiper blades, replace your key fob battery, top it up with screen wash, and just basically give the car a check over. And in the 3rd year, I think you got your HVAC coolant regassed, and biggest waste of money. I'm out of warranty now, and I mean there's nothing to do, right? If you can do your tire pressures, you can top up your own screen wash, you can replace your wiper blades. That's it.
Yeah.
Your drivetrain.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of a bit of a trick question, because I did this piece a couple of months ago about when the BIC business in kind rates change, and I did this piece and just comparing a kind of typical company car, which was I chose a Mercedes C220D because I see so many of those about, and happened to have one as a courtesy car at that point as well, versus a Tesla Model 3. I mean, you can save over 3 years of ownership. You save something like £15,000 as a company car. But I was trying to find out how much it costs to service a Model 3, and then it occurred to me nobody's done it. Nobody's serviced a Model 3 yet, because none of them are 2 years old yet. No. Because you don't have to service it in the first year. So you just, and that's a key thing. And, you've got, through it's a conservative estimate, you're servicing like £350 a year for that Mercedes already. And the Tesla doesn't get serviced for 2 years. And I figured it out from kind of US pricing, which is about that it's about £250 maybe, is it, independent, for an independent to do it, would be about what it would be. But
I mean, realistically, there is nothing to do. There is no fluids in the motor. Yeah, I mean, there's drivetrain fluid, but that should be good for at least 4, if not 5 years.
And with respect, there's still nearly as many things as a normal car, because it has all the same, very similar suspension components and steering components, which need to be inspected.
Sure.
Which exactly the same as a petrol car. It still has, the floor pan needs checking for corrosion. There's still coolants to check and change on broadly the same schedule as a petrol car, but just isn't a regular oil change.
Yeah.
I had main dealer servicing my car, Kia Soul. It's on 1 year stroke 10,000 mile service intervals, and has to do quite a few miles, and they're every 5 to 7 months. And a minor service is £60, a major service is 110. I can't complain.
Well, I paid £420 for 3 services with Nissan Leaf, but that was the 2018 I had, and I only used 1 service. And I've got this one now, and I've got 2 more services left. They carried the service over. So £420 divided by 3. So what's that going on? 320.
104. Isn't that 140?
About 140.
Yeah. The service I had with the 2018 one, they took it in. They couldn't top the windscreen washer because I'd kept it topped up anyhow. I got a lovely video of the guy wandering around underneath the car telling me that my brakes were 8mm thick, my brake pads. And what else? Well, just like a 5 stars on the battery. That's all I got.
Just a quick welcome to Greg from the Take It EV podcast.
Hello.
Hi, Greg. Just so you know, Greg, we are actually recording, so you're live on Channel 4. Please do not swear.
Bloody hell! Sorry, somebody's gonna have to bleep that. No, just to add on to the Nissan servicing, because I just joined literally. But in that 100 and something quid, what they include is the roadside assistance for a year.
Yeah.
So even though you're paying, for a guy to walk around, you have to appreciate that. And like, if I send my wife over to do the servicing, she would be like, yeah, happy that somebody checked the brakes because she wouldn't be able to do it herself. But that roadside assistance has, saves people whenever they run out, basically. So if you don't pay that and you call the Nissan, if you run out after the first year or so, then they'll say, well, you're gonna have to pay us to tow you. So that's the I think that's the bulk of that cost.
That's interesting. I think there's a big opportunity here actually for, independent garages or new companies to spring up and offer something a bit different to your regular kind of grease monkey, garage services, because there is, there's still, obviously MOTs are still needed and this and that and the other, but overall there should be less to go wrong on an EV. So, obviously Matt Cleveley down in Cheltenham Way is doing it. I think there's a few other garages now popping up, but I think there's a real opportunity here for a company or someone to set up, garages that are just a bit, let's say a little bit more, not genuine. I think that's possibly the wrong word, but, a different level and different experience of service to what we'd normally expect.
Yeah, I think you're all getting them. So, sorry.
Oh, sorry. There is the, I don't know what it stands for, the HEVRA. Yeah. Or HEVRA, yeah. Hybrid and Electric Vehicle Repair Alliance. That's what it stands for. So if you look up on their website on the hevra.org.uk, you get the independent garages. So, your Joe Blogs down the road in a garage who gets certified to actually service your EVs. Because I appreciate that EVs, it's a bit of a myth that EVs don't need much servicing. It depends on the car. If you have a higher performance EV like a Tesla or your tires and other things will go very quickly. Like we went through, I think, 4 sets of tires on our Nissan Leaf, and it's done 50,000 miles. But it's, the car has a lot of torque, so what can you do? That's my excuse anyway. But we're still on the original brakes, so it's, swings and roundabouts. If this was a nice car, by now we would have to have a cam belt done and some other bits and bobs, but there's none of that in the car.
Yeah. Take it that if you get it serviced by a HEVRA garage, that it's keeps its warranty, because that's one of the big things that you worry about. If you get it serviced by a third party, the warranty is then void.
That's the separate issue. So they would have to be certified garage by whatever manufacturer it was.
And one thing I would say though is that a lot of garages now, and they're selling you an EV. For instance, I bought a second-hand Zoe in December, so it wasn't even a brand new car, 10,000 miles on the clock. And they give me 2 free services with that. They realise they're not giving you a lot, but you can get that thrown in easy with an EV. They know they haven't got to do anything with it. Basically, they know they're not giving you much, but it'll save you 300 quid on the service price. I mean, I've got 2 free services. I've got the car for 2 years. I'll probably skip year 3 and maybe get one done before I sell it, or if I intend to keep it.
Yeah. But I mean, you bought it off a garage who really knows what they're doing as well, didn't you? So.
Yeah. That is a good point about the being certified, because in my example, for instance, and I'm sure others can chip in as well, but we had with something like a Nissan Leaf or Renault Zoe, you don't get over-the-air updates. So it goes in for a service and they do the BMS updates, for instance, and that has to be done in a garage. And obviously Nissan's not going to give the actual trinkets to do it and the software to a third-party garage unless they have to, they have to pay for that certification or to be in the network or whatever the scheme that a particular OEM runs. But that's a good point that if your car is over 3 years old, say, and it's running fine, it doesn't need any updates. I actually found when talking to the independent repairs that actually I got more information, but then about what's going on with the car and so on. But then it's just, it might be interesting for somebody who cares about these things. But if you're again just interested in running an EV, all you want to do is just drop off the car and then pick it up when it's ready, right? At the end of the day, that's just, you want to make sure that it's done its MOT and it's running fine.
I mean,
The rest-
EV is a growing market, and there's a lot more independent garages popping up, and these people are active to grow their businesses and work with people. I mean, DSG, for example, I bought mine from. There's some more Zoe's anywhere in the country, and he's told me that I need a couple of BMS updates because my car's tending to trip charges. And I know I can take it up there, and he'll probably do it for little or nothing. And I've got a relationship with the garage, whereas with a big legacy auto dealer that sells one model of EV, they're not interested.
Yeah, it's true.
Guys, I have to go and do some family stuff. So
Thank you for joining us, James.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah.
nice to hear from you.
yeah, thanks for letting me in, and hopefully I can be invited back sometime.
No, you're welcome to any. All are welcome to our meeting.
Yeah, it's really
Apart
some
from
really
the
interesting
spammers.
discussion. I've enjoyed it a lot. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you very much.
James.
See you later.
See you later.
Yeah.
Most people choose who services their car based on convenience or because they just bought the car from them in the first place. Like
Yes.
my Kia main dealer is 5 minutes walk from a train station just on the edge of the centre of Bradford. Whereas if I was to find somebody else who was specialised and so on, it probably wouldn't be in such a convenient location. And for the small saving it'd make, it probably wouldn't be worth my effort to go somewhere else, because the main dealer for me has been a sensible price and is only 5 minutes from the train.
I think what we'll see is,
Or
you know, you
do the service in 20 minutes. Oh.
You've got to remember that, you know, we're all still quite early adopters. And, you know, when people who have never driven an EV before, they're going to go to their local, you know, Nissan, Renault, whatever dealer, because that's, you know, there aren't that many second-hand EVs available at the moment. So the chances are they are going to be going back to that main dealer for servicing. The question is, how enthusiastic is the dealer to sell them a car in the first place? And do they actually know what they're doing with EVs, you know, when some work does need doing on it? You know, I think, you know, I'm sure we've all heard some pretty horrific stories of people with certain vehicles, you know, taking months and months to get issues fixed at their dealer because the dealer just doesn't know what they're doing.
I think it's becoming less and less a common issue because this whole heifer thing and whenever, and a lot of the automotive press are basically saying about it. So the actual companies, because they will be selling, have to sell a lot of EVs going forward, are making sure and are really pressing people to do it. I mean, Ian could probably tell you more about that, about the pressure that's going on the actual garages themselves from the manufacturers.
I think we've lost Ian, actually. Ian's dropped out.
Oh, have we?
I don't know whether it's a signal thing, but yeah,
it's going to be fascinating to. Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how the attitudes of dealers change, because only last year I nipped into the Kia dealer in Oxford just to have a look at the e-Niro. They said, "Oh no, you know, sorry, we haven't got one." And I said, "Oh, you know, are you going to be getting one in at any point soon?" And I just got a really kind of like, "We don't know, we don't care" answer.
Yeah, the attitude is still bad. I mean, it's again, because I follow the automotive industry press, because of what I do, they have like surveys and things like that that go out to all the kind of the main dealers and stuff like that, whatever, and they're always complaining, apart from maybe a couple of the manufacturers, are always complaining that basically they don't want to sell them, they don't want to have anything to do with it, they don't know anything about it, they don't care, they won't want to. But at the same point, the same kind of people, the same kind of press releases are going, basically, this is what we've got to do. That if basically you want to stay in business, you've got to do it. So I think attitudes are changing simply because they're fully aware that even if they don't want to, they have to get knowledgeable on them. They have to change, because if they don't sell them, they can't sell that really expensive 4-litre, highly profitable SUV.
But there is a new model emerging, isn't there, where you can actually order cars online and have them delivered even. Where
that's what VW does.
Yeah. and I see a lot more of that happening over the next 5 to 10 years, because I think a lot of people's experience of dealers is not particularly positive, and mine haven't been particularly positive, I have to say. And I think that you have to start to ask yourself, well, what's the point of them?
Yes, yeah.
But this is one of the other issues, because you've got your dealer network is mainly where you get your car serviced for the vast majority of people buying a new car. So what you're basically asking is you're basically having a dealer network which is losing the profit they're getting off selling you a car, and they're also losing the profit from servicing because people are going elsewhere, or they're not because it's cheaper to do service an EV. You're going to get rid of all the dealer networks, and there is a positive for having a dealer network. It isn't just all negative. So they currently the model that they're serving, and I'm sure somebody else, because I've never worked at a dealership, so I know it from talking to other people who did, and didn't want to be interviewed on the podcast, but we're happy to share their inside knowledge. Is that they have at the end of the day, they have contracts with OEMs or OEM, and they're told to what to push, basically. So one of the reasons why Nissan Leaf was such a good seller in the early times of the EVs in the UK is that Nissan basically told every garage that you have to sell 10 a month. That's your target. We don't care how many Qashqais you're going to sell. You're going to have to sell 10 Leafs a month. So they were just happy to give the employee discounts and whatever just to get rid of them. And if you ask for a Nissan Leaf when you walked to the garage, they were smiling ear to ear. And if you told them that you paid the full price, they were even happier. Yeah. So
the thing you have to remember is that, with the exception of Tesla, dealerships are basically there so that the manufacturer doesn't carry the cost, right? So with Tesla, doesn't matter if they sell 1 million cars or 0 cars, they've still got all the overheads of all their service centers and everything to sell. Whereas with every other company, they don't. And in fact, a lot of car manufacturers force dealers to buy cars from them to create that constant supply of cars coming out. So, at the moment, obviously, we've had a lot of car factories shut down. But even in lean times, dealers have still got to order cars, to buy cars. So I think that will change. I think we'll see a lot of effectively shops, high street, quote unquote high street or shopping centre, car showrooms, and then you just buy it online and it turns up and there's a place you can take it, if it needs servicing. But I think we'll see big car dealer showrooms disappear because they're not going to make the money from servicing, really. Massive overheads, all these massive, service centers, showrooms. And I don't think that's going to be profitable going forward.
I mean, I think that Daimler, Mercedes-Benz are kind of ahead of the game on this one, because if you look at their smart car brand, which is now mostly EV, you pushed very firmly into actually ordering the cars online, and there are centres throughout the country where you can go and view the car, but they won't take the order. You have to submit the order online. Mm-hmm. So I see this sort of virtual, where you have a show place where they're showcased, and then everything being done online. Partly because the overheads are much smaller, and so the liabilities, you don't have the huge numbers of staff that it takes at the moment. I mean, my local Nissan dealer, you walk in there and you get the distinct impression that you wonder what on earth all those people are doing all day, because they don't appear to be doing very much. And where I've taken my car in for repair or service, I mean, I had a creaky mirror replaced last year, and I remember sat there thinking, well, what are all these guys doing? And the building is, it's not exactly kitted out cheaply. So it's a huge overhead, really.
Isn't this the argument about every dealer? Some are good and some are... my dealer has been very prompt, sensible prices, welcoming. Everything's been done exactly, with the time they said it would be, or when they were a little bit delayed, he was very apologetic. And he just had his 50th birthday, had the service manager, so he offered me some of his cake he was sharing with the staff. You can't ask more than...
I can't believe that you went in for a creaky door mirror and came back with the same car. I took mine in and came back with a different car.
That's a good salesman's technique. That's not the service.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Unfortunately, that mirror also started going creaky as well. So I'm kind of back to square one, and I've just given up worrying about it now.
I hate to be cynical, but I think in case of someone like Merck, it's the salespeople are getting massive commissions. So if they're selling something like a Smart for a quarter of the price, they're not going to care. So I think that's that's my cynical take. As much as I hate to being cynical, I'm pretty sure I'm close to being right on that.
Yes, that's the free sector, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, the one advice that I always give people when they want to get an EV and they're interested about it and they want to go to their favorites, because most people are brand loyal. Let's be honest, because they have a good experience with particular brands and they're familiar with the where the buttons are and all that. I usually tell people as soon as you walk into the garage and talk to the salesperson, just say you're interested in a pure EV. You're not interested in a hybrid. Please don't buy hybrids. That's my advice. Just walk in and say, I want a pure EV. What do you have to offer? Give me a call when you have something on the show floor. And I've done that in the past just on purpose to kind of, to see what they will do. In likes of Vauxhall garages, for instance, who didn't have a pure EV in the future at all, like a year ago. And they were very polite about it. And they said, well, we don't have anything at the moment, blah, blah, blah. But right now, if you walk into a Vauxhall garage, for instance, it's just a random example, they'll be very happy to help you. They have actually, brochures and stuff about EVs. They're educated about it. So I think there are very few OEMs right now who don't know that they have to sell EVs. It might have been the case a year ago, but I think that things are getting much, much better. The only trouble is there isn't enough supply to meet the demand. Because one thing that we found out during the lockdown now is that, like somebody said before me, there's loads of cars been manufactured, nobody buying them. So if you want to buy a nice car now, they're going off very cheap because there's just loads of them. But it's quite the opposite for EVs. Whereas you could, if you looked into any car showroom online or even talked to them 2 months ago, they would have EVs in stock, second-hand, whatever. If you do it now, on Auto Trader, most sort of reasonably priced and with the reasonable range EVs, you can buy them new for less than you would buy a second-hand one with a couple thousand miles on the clock, because there's so much demand. People are just getting rid of them for more money, which is just crazy.
Can I ask you guys a question about the ICE cars? So with the switch over to the EVs in 2035, do you think the manufacturers of petrol and diesel engines are going to stop and think, hold on a second, what's the point in increasing the efficiency and dropping emissions on their engines? Because effectively they're going against a dead end, because they're going to...
They already are.
Yeah, VW's already said that they're effectively ceasing all the research and development into ICE engines.
So I did a tour around the Mini factory in Oxford, probably November, December last year, which is awesome. Actually, you should definitely go and do it. We should organise a club a trip there one day because it is amazing to watch, cars being made. But they said that they're basically going to do no more development work on their petrol and diesel engines because
there's no point.
Why would you bother? There's just no point.
Think about it. They have an opportunity here, don't they, to not only say we're going to make battery cars going forward, but there's a whole range of products that go with that. Home energy packs, solar panels. They've got a business opportunity to expand the range and scope of their business, and they could not only sell a car, they could sell me a battery pack, a solar panel pack, all sorts of products that are being developed now that aren't in the mass market. And if they've got any sense, that's where they'll put their development into looking to provide whole life solutions.
It's the thing, isn't it?
More money out of the accessories than they potentially will out of the car.
Oh, for me, the really interesting bit is, and obviously Tesla's been doing it. They sussed it out early doors. Was if you can also supply the fuel that runs the car, you've got it end to end, haven't you? If you can make a profit from on every bit of that car's life cycle.
Yeah, it was in their case. I don't think it's about making the profit. They're interested in keeping you as a customer. So if you provide end-to-end solution, that's great, and you're happy with it, makes you smile, you're going to go back to them. It's just that simple. Yeah. But on another point on the engine development is that most car or most OEMs actually don't even develop their own engines. There's groups. That's why the likes of Audis, for instance, they have the same engines as VWs and Skodas and whatever. It's a whole group because it's so expensive to actually run research and development and actually improve things. You just have to. There's so many car OEMs. I keep on saying car manufacturers. OEMs that actually buy engines from Honda, for instance, who's a major manufacturer of ICE engines, and they just rebadge them pretty much, or they order particular type, and then somebody else just clunks it out. And I think that's one of the biggest things that will have to change is that they will have to start again developing things in house. That's why they're very reluctant to because if you're an OEM now, you go to 50 different companies, suppliers to get all your bids, and if those suppliers don't have the bids for an EV, you're not going to make an EV because you don't have the knowledge and the research and development teams in house to do it. Nissan had it, early on. Which is why they came up with the Leaf, but everyone else is dragging their feet, and I'm really surprised that nobody else is doing the battery development in house yet, apart from Tesla and VW. It's a shocker to me. I think
it's not their skill set, is it? It's not what they do. They make cars. They build metal boxes. They take bits from here, there, and everywhere, bolt them together. I mean, even if you look at the MG, right, it's all Bosch parts under the hood, really. So firms like Bosch are gonna really soar because
they've been on their ball for years. If you go to Siemens or Bosch, they have bids for EVs and they had them for ages. I've been to a show a couple years ago because sorry, I'm hearing myself in the back, and I went to an aviation show a couple of years ago, and Bosch and Siemens were both showing off the electric airplane engines or motors, basically, because they know that's the future in aviation as well. They've been on top of it for ages. But with regards to the cost of the and not having the knowledge in house, I think just like any other company out there, when you have so much money in the bank, you just go and buy loads of businesses and merge them in. You just expand your portfolio. It's just I don't think OEMs are set up to run that way. Whereas Tesla, for instance, was a startup. I don't think they are anymore. But they have to acquire loads of other businesses to kind of get things going, and they have to partner with Panasonic, whatever. Whereas the OEMs are not set up that way. They just they just give you the same old thing in a new shell, with it's I don't know. I can waffle about it for ages, but the I always give a very good example, which I think a very good example. If you think about safety features that have been recently popping up on every car out there, which is things like lane keep assist and what are the other ones, like cameras that actually recognize the speed limit signs and so on. There's a reason why every single OEM out there all of a sudden has the same set of features available, and that's because Siemens and Bosch have that available for them to just integrate with their cars. But if you open the bonnet, not much has changed under the bonnet, unfortunately. The car might get a slightly different chassis, and
sorry. Down overall of every car is basically that they use the same parts of a million cars all the way across the world for everybody. It doesn't matter which manufacturer you are. And if you look about the kind of platforms that people are building now, as GM pointed out, the electric platform gives you so much ability to basically use the same engineering in loads of different car types. I mean, you don't need to do much different to the MEB platform to stick it in a Touareg, or a Touareg style car, than the ID3 that's coming out. It's going to be so much cheaper because if you think with an engine, even if you've got the same engine, you have to have a different drivetrain, a different transmission tunnel, and things like that for each car you want to develop.
And we've got a bit of an issue with your sound, mate. It's very low.
We can just about hear you, but very, very quiet. I think, it's interesting actually you say that, if I sort of heard most of you correct. And again, it's one of the fascinating things I saw on the mini tour is that, they had, they give you all these, numbers and things. It's amazing. They have 11 Arctic lorries arriving every hour with parts for the cars, mostly from overseas, but the way they're integrating all these things on the line is absolutely fascinating to see, because you can actually go and see that there'll be a diesel car and a petrol car and a 2-door and a 4-door and an electric, and then these things just coming down the line, and the way that everything is scheduled and put together. So it's very interesting. But obviously they're owned by BMW, so most of the stuff there is BMW manufactured or sourced parts. But I think we are going to start to see car manufacturers starting to make a bit more of their own stuff in house. I know Toyota, see, being very, very slow to the EV party, they actually fund a battery research team down in Portsmouth, University of Portsmouth.
Okay, sorry, I thought you'd finished speaking. Apologies, Ed. I'm just going to say that I'll end that for the recorded part of the session. It's nearly 1 o'clock. I've got to shoot off in a couple of minutes myself. I'll leave the meeting running for a moment. I'm just going to finish the recorded section. Thank you very much. It's been a very interesting meeting. All of your views and your points are fantastic. And I hope that the people on YouTube are going to find a wealth of information here. And thank you very much to everyone that spoke and joined the meeting. I'm just going to stop this recording now.